Guess we'll start here. We just took the stock fuse box out, ran everything down through there just like it would be from the factory, saved the little grommet. One thing I did have to do was blue number 5. You have to set as a generic output, turn your relays on for your fuel injectors and your coil packs. What I did is up in the front, I just cut that blue wire right up at the ECU, turn the key on, those relays turn right on instead of having to use a generic output. Swag and Audi coil packs, I just wired them up like smart coils and set the dwell times. The OEM crank trigger, cam trigger, I believe it's a VR6 throttle body, drive-by-wire, that's how it idles, does all the things. Starter relay, reuse the stock connectors going down to a starter. For a wideband, we just took the white wire from the AEM, hooked it up to one of the white inputs on the fuel tech, just set it as O2 general, then you can run it in closed loop. So instead of buying the expansion harness, I just wired the fuel injectors up sequentially using the B harness and wired them into the way they would normally sell it, because we wanted to use that second harness without getting it terminated. The OEM fans in there, they're PWM, so they're wired up basically like stock. I had to use a yellow output from the fuel tech to find the control wires from the fans, just a red with gray stripe and a red with white stripe right off the main fan harness. So I found the actual harness that goes up to the fans. I just cut the red and gray, red and white wire. Red and gray, if you just hook up just 12 volts to it, it'll run 100% all the time. Then I took the yellow output from the fuel tech, hooked it to the red and white wire. I set it to PWM. I had to set it to 20 hertz, and I had to do a minimum of, I believe it's 10% on the fans to get it to turn off. If I do 0, it doesn't send a signal at all, and the fan just tries to run 100%. Just use a yellow wire, set it to your thermatic fan, PWM mode, set it 20 hertz, start at 10%, go up to 100, and that'll make the fan work by your water temp. We unplugged the entire engine harness and kept this box in. It's part of the CAN bus. Basically everything else in the car is controlled through this box. So we just left it plugged in. We didn't really have to do anything with that. And the windows, the door locks, the lights, all that stuff still works. I put a little fuse box with a relay off of the ignition switch. So it's an ignition switched little fuse block. That way I could run, you know, my fan wire, the ECU, boost gauge, all that stuff. I'm running off of this little fuse block, and it is on a relay, and the relay is fused because you don't want to pull everything right off of your ignition switch. He's got his battery in the trunk. We ran a big battery wire and a big ground, a main ground, just to go up for the ECU and to make like a nice ground junction block there that goes straight to the battery. His fuel pump wiring, I've got it all wired in here. Still working on hooking up the fuel level sender. Just a big relay here, and again, this is for the fuel pump. So it's running straight off the battery. The relay goes to the fuel tech. Fuel tech controls it. It's just set up for on off. He's got 2 fuel pumps and a small surge tank. So he's got the stock in tank. When you turn the key on, it primes. When you're cranking it, it runs both pumps. It's just a big green yellow wire is your main fuel pump wire, your hot. I just took the ground right off the pump and grounded it right here on the chassis for that. Fuel pump level sender, it's this purple, black, yellow, brown, or brown, yellow. That'll be for the level sender. What I did was pulled a input, just one of the fuel tech inputs, and then one of the sensor grounds for that. The other thing we got to do, hook up the wheel speed sensors so the speedometer works on the fuel tech. We do have like the oil pressure and fuel pressure hooked up on this, going straight to the fuel tech. Put a GM sensor in for his water temp. Just milled down the little bung that it comes with so that it fits in the stock location. Then we plugged it right in. This blue sensor looking thing is not a sensor. This car has an electric thermostat. It didn't work, it wouldn't open, so it kept blowing the coolant out. So we ended up just pulling the electric thermostat out for now. So that's something to think about if you're doing one of these cars. You gotta either come up with a way to bypass the electronic thermostat or come up with a way to wire it to the fuel tank. So I'm just gonna pull this dash out. So I got the wires and everything in here in a manner that pull the dash out a little to get the stuff. We're using the internal map sensor. We're in a splitter up here going to his boost gauge and to the fuel tank. Down there you can see fuse block in there. Then we're running his AEM gauges off of that. There's the relay, my ground junction for, you know, any accessories, just the stock spot there. But I think that's pretty good. It's nice and hidden in there. You can kind of see down in there. Up here, that's the stock power distribution block. And I just went ahead, hooked everything up there. So that's our battery, you know, battery positive junction block. Here's the fuse for the ignition relay, the ignition switched fuse panel right here. We got everything integrated about as well as possible.